In that time, our world has taken so many steps in the wrong direction. In the negative utopia, science, technology, social organization, dehumanization. In the negative utopia, science, technology, social organization. Technology, social organization, dehumanization. Technology, social organization.
Here we are, Christy, Leo, the Leo Zagami show. This is our Saturday show.
We're here.
We are back on Saturday because we had this week a special on Wednesday, but that was something special. In fact, we usually have our new format on Saturday, the Leo Zagami show, with a lot of news and also special dedicated to a specific subject. And I would like to first of all address the title, because CIA wannabe Tucker Carlson exposed during peace. Putin history lesson. Yes. So what does it mean? What does it mean? It's important that people understand what we are talking about here, because it's beyond any doubt that during the interview it came up that Tucker wanted to become a CIA agent. This now it could be interpreted in various ways. Christy interprets it like maybe this was a signal to Tucker Carlson himself. But I told her that basically...
No, I was thinking, well, maybe he was a CIA agent, and then talk, because I know people that were in my life that were probably CIA agents, and they don't tell anybody. So, but anyway, if he is one, then that would be a sneaky way for Putin to expose him. Not that
But
I don't know.
I instead
I
have
don't know.
another interpretation. I think that he actually granted this interview because he's one of the very few journalists who is not in the CIA, who is not an intelligence agency. Remember, this was the first interview granted to a foreign journalist since the beginning of the so-called military operation in Ukraine by Russia, by the Russian Federation. So let's go and check out, first of all, what he was talking.
We didn't thank the sponsors.
Yes, that's an important thing. That
You forgot the format.
No, what do you mean? You forgot the
And
format.
we didn't do any. We don't dance to the end. I forgot. We danced in the beginning.
Yeah,
on
you're getting confused.
I'm getting
with
confused. No, but we always do the sponsors.
Yes, no, the sponsors are very important and they need to be thanked with a great applause. So, Christy, who are the sponsors of today?
Melgarizada, Minta, and Holly Oris, and Bruce Kodish. You and the two girls, Bruce. So thank you very much, guys. Girls.
And of course, if you want to become a sponsor, remember that when you actually sponsor this broadcast, you can see the actual money it's invested in getting this show technically a little bit better, and at the same time also in maybe producing new shows, especially when it comes to the exploring the occult Illuminati. That was a gift that we wanted to give this week to our sponsors. But let's of course give our sponsors an applause, the well-deserved applause. Here we have the applause. Is that your personal applause? Yeah. Okay. So thank you to our sponsors who permit this broadcast. And today, I mean, it's central to the understanding of today's show, the role that journalism has in relation to the CIA, rather than only the title that wanted to be as an introduction to this topic. So first of all, let's start, of course, with Putin's brief moment in which he kind of he actually says also other things in that part of the interview which we should maybe listen to. But I think first of all, let me go and see if I can show you exactly what I'm talking about, because this is Tucker, and this was the moment he made this. He didn't react, guys, because he knew it was true. But it doesn't mean that this is bad necessarily for Tucker now. This was a young
called him a wannabe.
That's why we entitled the CIA Wannabe. It's not anything because we want to condemn Tucker, who did otherwise an excellent interview. I think that it was an excellent interview. Some people have painted it as a softball interview. I think actually he did some great questions. Of course, I think that it was very interesting to see that Putin, who is actually somebody who doesn't have specific an historian degree at the university, knows probably more about history than Tucker, who apparently is somebody who has studied history. And I think also there is this Putin caught Tucker by surprise by talking about actual history and delivering this history lesson.
You sound like you.
Well, yeah, and in fact, I would like to remind the people who are tuned in that there is a very in-depth history lesson of the secret societies that built the Ukrainian identity in this book, in volume 9. Of course, Putin went far back. He went right to the beginnings, the origins of the Russian identity, how it was all born, and then Tucker kept on saying, "But what does this have to do with today?" Because of course it has to do with today. I mean, we are talking about a country with a history that spans over 1,000 years, in which, of course, if this history also passes through Ukraine, Kiev, it has a lot to do with their own identity, their own national identity. But this was the moment instead about the Putin bringing up the wannabe CIA Tucker.
Backing of CIA, of course. The organization you wanted to join back in the day, as I understand. We should thank God they didn't let you in. Although, it is a serious organization. I understand.
Okay, now this is, repeat, not a criticism to Tucker, who actually, because of apparently attitudinal problems, was not let in. They didn't think that he could follow the discipline. And maybe some other people within the journalist world.
Wait, say that again? What happened?
Okay. Putin thanked Tucker. At the same time, of course, with this message, is sending a very strong message to the American intelligence community, because he's saying, I know exactly what happens there and which ask this and this and that. So he knows which journalists are maybe on the payroll of the CIA. He has a couple of journalists in the prisons, American journalists, today in the prisons of Russia because of that accusation of espionage. And of course, it is a very valid accusation, because here we go as far back as Operation Mockingbird and also Project Mockingbird. So we need to address this subject very seriously. And also, when in the title, I said, and what about, Putin's, and what about Sean Hannity? No? Yeah. What about Sean Hannity? Sean Hannity basically is somebody who parades this pin. Apparently, he parades also other pins. Now we're gonna go and hear from him the explanation of why he is wearing often this CIA pin alongside the FBI pin and other pins, especially for somebody who is often very critic of these federal agencies. Yeah. Yes, federal agencies. So this is the pin in question, the CIA pin that is regularly worn by Sean Hannity. Now, while Tucker Carlson was kicked out of Fox, Sean Hannity seems to be still there, very firm, very much in his bubble of conservative conformism. Of course, thank God, he is also a supporter of Donald J. Trump, but and he has been all along. I mean, he hasn't seemed to have changed his tune. But the accusation, of course, or at least we suspect something is going on with this pin, and I'm not the only one to suspect it. So somebody actually went to Sean Hannity, and they asked Sean Hannity, what about this pin? So let's see what he said. This was last October.
I could ask you if wearechange.org. Wearechange.org. I wanted to ask you about about your CIA lapel pin. A lot of people have questions about that, especially when it comes to like MK Ultra and the Iran contract.
Pin, yeah. I have an FBI pin, Secret Service pin, so I have a lot of pins that I wear. Yeah. I have a special pin I wear every 9/11, the Twin Towers on it. Oh.
Do you think the confidence in the FBI has been undermined recently, especially with their actions?
Anyone's been more outspoken about the leadership within the FBI and how it's been weaponized and politicized than me. But I do stand with the rank and file, and I make a distinction, and I've made that distinction on radio, on TV, more times than I could possibly ever discuss it. I love the guys that put their lives on the line for us. I don't like the people who've been running it, and how it's been politicized and weaponized has to stop. That can't happen in this country. The FBI knew the laptop was real in March of 2020. They had a copy in December of 2019. Then why were they telling big tech companies in the lead up to 2020, for months, weekly meetings, big tech companies, oh, you might be a victim of a misinformation campaign, and it may be about Joe or Hunter Biden. And then when the story broke, and Twitter and Facebook specifically asked the FBI if it was legitimate, they wouldn't give them an answer. Yeah. You know what? That's putting the cinder blocks on the scales of an election.
Chuck Schumer said that the intel agencies have 7 ways to Sunday to screw over Donald Trump. Do you think wearing those pins kind of sends a mixed message, especially what they've been doing?
I've been very clear. I've said it on air why I wear it. I wear it for rank and file. I wear it for the people that got into law enforcement, that risk their lives every day for us. Not for the, upper echelon. I used to say 99% of good people. I'm probably down to 90 based on a lot of what we've learned. But for the people that, my mother was a prison guard. My dad was in family court probation. My dad was a waiter on weekends. My mom lived half her life doing double shifts in a prison. I respect law enforcement. I revered law enforcement growing up, still do for the good people. And I stand up for the good people. And I've made that clear publicly many times. Ma'am.
2 questions. The CIA pin, do you wear it because of what they went through with the Democrats right after,
Why
a
is
year?
everyone focused on one pin? I wear a lot of pins.
No, but
I wear a
agree
Secret
with
Service
you.
pin, an FBI pin.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I agree with you because
I
they
do,
got a
because-
lot of flack from the
Let
Democrats.
me tell you something. This is a dark, evil, dangerous world governed by the use of military force. We have a lot of enemies. One of the things that the media, or in the media spin room, needs to pay more attention to is why did the Biden family make tens of millions of dollars from countries like China and Russia, our top 1 and 2 geopolitical foes? Why did they make all this money from Romania and Kazakhstan and Ukraine? How does Hunter Biden, who admits at the time that he's addicted to drugs, and goes on Good Morning America and says he has no experience in energy, oil, gas, coal, or Ukraine, well, then why are you being paid millions of dollars? Do you get paid millions of dollars?
I wish.
Right? I think a lot of us, I don't even think you would take it if you didn't deserve it. So, those are questions the media in the media spin room won't ask. We've been penetrating, asking those questions, getting answers, and the walls are closing in on Joe Biden. He lied to the American people repeatedly as a candidate. He lied as president. He met with these leaders, including a Russian.
Well, I tend to trust more Tucker Carlson than Sean Hannity. I think Tucker is more of a maverick. That's why I hope you understand that saying CIA wannabe was because he was a CIA wannabe. He wanted to be in the CIA. They didn't take him, and even Putin knew about it. And in a way, Putin mocked Tucker about it. And at the same time, during this history lesson, like I said, we had a lot of interesting elements we might even discuss later. But what about Hannity then? Hannity, definitely a little bit more suspicious. So we would like here to go back to the roots of the problem, because this whole involvement of journalists with the CIA goes back to the 50s, but it only surfaced in the early 1970s. In particular, it surfaced thanks to a journalist who I think is one of the best investigative journalists ever. I mean, still to this day, he was the one who came up with exposing Norway and the United States on the bombing of the pipe stream. How you say on that? Nord Stream, yeah, Nord Stream 2. So basically, he's a great journalist, and so in this, how the CIA influence on public opinion works started to come out only when Seymour Hersh, which is this investigative journalist born in 1937, still very active because, like we said, he managed to bring out the sabotage of the Nord Stream pipelines and by Norway and the United States in 2023. So, I mean, he's old, but he's still there bringing out these scoops. He's really an investigative journalist I held in high regard. I mean, not all journalists are simply propaganda mouthpieces. There is some people who do their work. So in 1974, when Seymour Hersh came out and started to bring out the truth about the fact that there was actually governmental operations within the intelligence world that were working to influence public opinion by using journalists, Well, that is something that, of course, it was very shocking for a lot of people, especially because they started talking about Operation Mockingbird. Now there is Operation Mockingbird, there is then Project Mockingbird, Mockingbird. Okay, yes. Which are two slightly different things in the sense that the actual project was something that was activated by President Kennedy in relation to a couple of journalists who apparently then President Kennedy got wiretapped, so because they were violating government secrecy, and so he started. Actually, everybody says John Fitzgerald Kennedy, what a great president! He talked against secret society, but he was also the one who started to initiated Project Mockingbird, which basically led to the eavesdropping of journalists. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, everybody says always Kennedy so good, but then he had some things that were not that great. But regardless of Project Mockingbird, Operation Mockingbird is something that starts to become a problem, because it surfaces also in the middle of the 70s. The Congress formed what was known as the Church Committee. Now, it's not anything to do with the church. It's not because they went to church that morning. No, the Church Committee was a Senate Select Committee to study governmental operation with respect to intelligence activities, and the intelligence activities of the CIA, the NSA, the FBI, the Internal Revenue Services, the IRS, were investigated. And it was during that investigation that the first discussions on Operation MKUltra came out, on family jewels. And family jewels were basically a set of reports of illegal and inappropriate operations conducted by the CIA. On top of that, there was also various COINTELPRO covert and illegal projects actively conducted also by the FBI. All this came out with the Church Committee. So let's see what is Project Mockingbird, because this is very important to understand also all the rest of our story. But first of all, let's understand what they were doing in 1975.
That it was a matter of real concern that planted stories intended to serve a national purpose abroad came home and were circulated here and believed here, because this would mean that the CIA could manipulate the news in the United States by channeling it through some foreign country. Now, we're looking at that very carefully.
Do you have any people being paid by the CIA who are contributing to a major circulation American journal?
We do have people who submit pieces to American journals.
Do you have any people paid by the CIA who are working for television networks?
This, I think, gets into the kind of getting into the details, Mr. Chairman, that I'd like to get into in executive session.
At CBS, we had been contacted by the CIA. As a matter of fact, by the time I became the head of the whole news and public affairs operation in 1954, the ships had been established, and I was told about them and asked if I'd carry on with them.
We have quite a lot of detailed information, and we will evaluate it, and we will include any evidence of wrongdoing or any evidence of impropriety in our final report and make recommendations.
Do you have any people being paid by the CIA who are contributing to the national news services, AP and UPI.
Well, again, I think we're getting into the kind of detail, Mr. Chairman, that I'd prefer to handle in executive session.
Senator, do you think that you name the news organizations in your final report?
That remains to be decided.
I think it was entirely in order for our correspondents at that time to make use of CIA agent chiefs of station and other members of the executive staff of CIA as sources of information which were useful in their assessments of world conditions.
Would you say that continues today?
Well, I would think probably for a reporter it would continue today, but because of all of the revelations of the period of the 1970s, it seems to me that a reporter's got to be much more circumspect in doing it now, or he runs the risk of at least being looked at with considerable disfavor by the public. I think you've got to be much more careful about it.
I think you have to be much more careful about it. So they started to wake up to the fact that people were looking into it, especially after these revelations, like I said, started to come out in the early 70s. And we had also other important articles that followed about, in the second part of the 70s, about these newsmen involved in espionage. I can show you a collection of such articles here, a collection that comes directly from the CIA archives that are accessible publicly. So newsmen aren't spies. Then we have CIA may recruit newsmen, is editorial. So they were pretty, and why journalists shouldn't be spies. But then editors question CIA use of reporters as agents. So new CIA charter should prohibit the use of journalists as spies. And then you have CIA and journalists don't mix, but they always seem to mix. That's the problem. Reporters as spies, you can see that never ending, and the corrupting hand, media and the CIA, journalists as CIA agents, the CIA and the press. So it kind of goes on. Carter should know better.
There was Peter Jennings, and when I was a kid, I used to go in front of the TV and flip him off because I didn't trust him. Peter Jennings. Maybe it was Dan Rather. It was one of them.
One of them. And so at this point, Project Mockingbird, let's look into it and the roots of it. Here on the Leo Zagami Show with Leo and Christy Zagami. Welcome everybody. Today on Saturday, February 10th of the year of the Lord 2024.
How the CIA planned to brainwash Americans. Student group concedes it took funds from CIA. Such was the front page headline of the February 14, 1967 edition of the New York Times. The article described Operation Mockingbird. The operation was launched by the CIA in the 1950s. They recruited over 400 journalists into a propaganda network. The recruited journalists were put on payroll by the CIA. They were instructed to write fake stories. The stories promoted the views of the intelligence agency. Student cultural organizations and magazines were funded as fronts for this operation. Operation Mockingbird expanded to influence foreign media as well. The organization was spearheaded by Frank Wisner. He was the director of the Espionage and Counterintelligence Branch. Wisner was told to concentrate on propaganda, economic warfare, preventive direct action, sabotage, anti-sabotage, demolition and evacuation measures, subversion against hostile states, assistance to underground resistance groups, support of indigenous anti-communist elements in threatened countries of the free world. Journalists were threatened into this network. They were reportedly blackmailed. The CIA's financing was meant to create favorable stories. It was also a means to covertly collect information from other countries. Ramparts magazine exposed the covert operation in 1967. It reported that the National Student Association received funding from the CIA. In 1977, Carl Bernstein wrote an article in Rolling Stone. It was titled "The CIA and the Media." Bernstein claimed that the CIA secretly bankrolled foreign press services. They were both in English and foreign languages. They provided excellent cover for CIA operatives. These reports led to a series of congressional investigations. They were conducted in the 1970s under the Church Committee. The committee looked at potential abuses by the CIA, the NSA, the FBI, and the IRS. Senator Church publicly claimed,
"We have quite a lot of detailed information. We will evaluate it. We will include any evidence of wrongdoing in our final report."
In 2007, around 700 pages of documents from the 1970s were declassified. They were released by the CIA in a collection called the Family Jewels. The files detailed the investigations and scandals, but all of them pertained to agency misconduct. During the 1970s, there was only one mention of Operation Mockingbird. The files mentioned 2 American journalists being wiretapped. This is the only confirmation of Operation Mockingbird in existence. Thus, it's also never been officially discontinued. There were never any real charges brought against the CIA. The CIA no longer works in paid or contractual relationships with journalists. What is your way of distinguishing between fake and true information?
Hey man, that's a question. That's a question that we're trying somehow to debate today. I mean, after what Putin said about Tucker Carlson, who wanted to join the CIA, though his father was involved in journalism. You know, you imagine Tucker only involved with journalism. Who knows if Tucker's father was part of those 400 journalists involved with this operation, so-called Operation Mockingbird. Let's understand a little bit more, though, about what these people were doing. Let's understand it from a couple of interviews from the early 80s. One with former CIA agents John Stockwell, which I find particularly interesting. I like his hairstyle and his glasses.
I do too.
Okay, here we go.
Is to disseminate propaganda to influence people's minds, and this is a major function of the CIA. And unfortunately, of course, it overlaps into the gathering of information. You have contact with a journalist, you will give him true stories, you'll get information from him, you'll also give him false stories.
Did you buy his confidence with true stories?
You buy his confidence and set him up. We've seen this happen recently with Jack Anderson, for example, who has his intelligence sources, and he has also admitted that he's been set up by them. You know, every 5th story just simply being false. You also work on their human vulnerabilities to recruit them in a classic sense, to make them your agent so that you can control what they do, so you don't have to set them up sort of, you know, by putting one over on them. So you can say, here, plant this one next Tuesday.
Can you do this with responsible reporters?
Yes, the Church Committee brought it out in 1975, and then Woodward and Bernstein put an article in Rolling Stone a couple of years later. 400 journalists cooperating with the CIA, including some of the biggest names in the business, to consciously introduce the stories into the press.
But there is actually...
I bet Peter Jennings was one of them.
Probably. The Operation Mockingbird of the United States of America was filled with ties between the CIA and the various news anchors, directors, and so on. So here we are, though, with an interview that actually inspired Snowden very much. In fact, I think he mentions this interview at one point, Edward Snowden. So let's go and check it out. This is, an interview with a guy who I find it very interesting. I mean, I don't know if you will find it very interesting. It's called Frank Sneap. The one we just saw was the interview, I think done in the same year, by the way, with journalist Clyde Roberts in 1983 at the University of Southern California with John Stockwell. You just saw this interview. Instead, the next interview is with Frank Sneap, who discusses also planting stories in major newspapers. He was particularly active during the Vietnam War. And Edward Snowden said the most important video of the year was filmed in 1983. This is what he said. Also, Glenn Greenwald, who is a great journalist, said, please watch this detailed explanation from former CIA analyst Frank Snipp about how newspapers and magazines you were taught to regard as mainstream and reliable have always eagerly served as disinformation megaphones for the CIA and the US security state. That's still true. And Christy, read this part here.
Frank Snipp arrived in Vietnam in 1969 and stayed until he was evacuated as Saigon fell in 1975. He spent a good deal of time working with the press while there and developed the ability to plant stories in major media outlets like the New York Times, the New Yorker, the LA Times, Chicago Daily News, and others that supported the CIA's goals. I am, as an ex-CIA agent, opposed to the disinformation activities in which I was involved. I admit that I was involved, and I think it served no useful purpose. Propagandizing
the American public or Congress is not the CIA job. End of quote. This was the quote. The last 3 lines were a quote by Frank Snipp. Let's go and check out this interview, which I will find. I find particularly illuminating in this topic, which is, of course, not really discussed as much, even by alternative media, because everybody's scared of the fact that lurking behind every journalist, even in the so-called alternative media, there is probably
in alternative media.
In Operation Mockingbird, I don't think they gave much.
We see you. We know who you are.
We don't know. I mean, of course, who might be part of it or who is not part of it. But let's check out CIA officer, former CIA Frank Snipp, discussing planting stories back in the Vietnam War days.
Frank, I think a good many of us have the impression that the CIA operates completely undercover, that you're all spooks, as they say, or they used to say out in the Pacific. Do you have a high profile, or do people know what you do for a living?
Surely. In Saigon, I had various covers. I was a State Department officer. I was a military officer at one time. But everybody I dealt with, agents, journalists, knew that I worked for the CIA. It is the agent who works under very deep cover, under unofficial cover, as a businessman, as a journalist. Now, he's the one who is not identifiable and whom nobody else would identify with the agency.
What years were you there?
I got there in 1969, just as Vietnamization was getting underway, and I left with the last CIA contingent on the roof of the American Embassy when the North Vietnamese were moving on the city in 1975. I was there through the latter stages of the war.
Did you go out on that helicopter in the famous pictures we saw?
Well, the CIA helicopter was the one that forms that famous photograph, but I wasn't on that one.
Mm-hmm. You briefed the press, did you not, when you were there?
Well, I had several jobs. One of my jobs was that of analyst. I also was an interrogator and indeed briefed the press when we, the CIA, wanted to circulate disinformation on a particular issue. Disinformation is not necessarily a lie. It may be a half-truth. And we would pick out a journalist. I would go do the briefing and hope that he would put the information in print.
What was your percentage of success?
We were pretty successful in planting information of a rather rarefied nature. For instance, if we wanted to get across to the American public that the North Vietnamese were building up their force structure in South Vietnam, I would go to a journalist and advise him that in the past 6 months, X number of North Vietnamese forces had come down the Ho Chi Minh Trail system through southern Laos. Now, there is no way a journalist can check that information. That's data derived from radio intercepts, spy in the sky photography. So either he goes with the information or he doesn't, and ordinarily or usually the journalist would go with it because it looked like some kind of exclusive. And I would say our percentage planning that kind of data was 70 to 80%.
Can you recall the names of any of the correspondents you used in that manner?
Used is a loaded term. The correspondents we targeted were those who had terrific influence, the most respected journalists in Saigon, like Robert Chaplin of the New Yorker magazine, Kai's Beach of the Los Angeles Times from time to time, and also he worked for the Chicago Daily News. Bud Merrick of U.S. News and World Report, Malcolm Brown of the New York Times, even Maynard Parker of Newsweek magazine. We would go after these gentlemen. I would be directed to cultivate them, to spend time with them at the Caravel Hotel or the Continental Hotel, to socialize with them, and slowly but surely to try to gain their confidence by dolloping out valid information which was true. And then I would drop into a conversation the data that we wanted to get across, which might not be true. One piece of data, for instance, that we managed to plant in the New Yorker magazine had to do with a supposed North Vietnamese effort in 1973 to develop airfields along the border of South Vietnam. The reason we wanted to plant this information was that we were trying to persuade the U.S. Congress that Saigon should continue to get a great deal of aid, and that the North Vietnamese were the chief violators of the ceasefire accord. That was printed in the New Yorker magazine under the byline of Robert Chaplin, as indeed was a great deal of such information which we tried to circulate.
Considering that you knew the amount of disinformation, or most of it, that was being fed to the correspondents, what do you think, or what did you think, of the quality of reporting that came out of Vietnam?
Reporting from correspondents who were operating independently of the agency, who did not rely on agency sources, was very good. I cite in particular Peter Arnett. I remember after the fall of Saigon, one of my jobs was to query journalists who'd stayed in Vietnam after the collapse, and as they came out, I was to get in touch with them and try to persuade them to report on what they'd seen. This was not a disinformation job, it was an intelligence collection operation. I contacted Peter Arnett at Associated Press headquarters, and I said, Mr. Arnett, I'm Frank Snepp from the American Embassy. Could you tell me what you saw? And there was a silence on the line, and he said, you can read about it in my Associated Press dispatch. He was one of the few journalists who turned me down, however. There were a great many others who were willing to trade their information for information I might have, which was a frequent transaction in Vietnam.
Any other reporters you can remember who refused to have anything to do with the CIA? Can you name them?
Well, there were lots of young reporters who didn't want to deal with the agency because they were very suspicious. Many of them had come out of the anti-war movement in the United States and had a natural disinclination to trust any official agency. Offhand, the names escape me because, again, we weren't interested in going after the reporter for Ramparts magazine. We were interested in targeting those reporters who could get their material in the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, and so forth. And once again, I want to make it perfectly clear that we were not hiring these reporters. They were not operating as our spies or as our dupes. But in a war situation, when there are so few sources of information, a reporter may rely on a CIA contact, and he becomes vulnerable. In Saigon, if I planted a piece of information with a reporter, I would ordinarily then try to create an environment in which he could not check the information. I would go to the British ambassador and brief him on the disinformation I had just given the reporter. So when the reporter wanted to cross-check what I'd told him with, say, the British ambassador, New Zealand ambassador, or what have you, he would get false confirmation, the same message coming back at him, and he'd say, aha, I've got proof that Frank Snepp told me the truth, when in fact, what he'd gotten was simply an echo of what I'd given him in the first place, via the British ambassador or other of our friendly diplomatic contacts.
Frank, a two-part question. What were the objectives of or what was the objective of the CIA? What about the moral implications of what you were doing in feeding disinformation? Did the objective override the moral implications, moral problems?
Well, the objective of the agency in general is to generate intelligence and get it back to Washington, to get at the truth and make sure the policymakers understand it. When you plant disinformation, you are diverging from that objective, and I think probably in retrospect it was very counterproductive. I am, as an ex-CIA agent, opposed to the disinformation activities in which I was involved. I admit that I was involved, and I think it served no useful purpose. Propagandizing the American public or Congress is not the CIA's job. As to the morality of what the CIA was doing or that particular activity, the war was a very relative thing. It was a relativist environment, and morality seldom came into
question.
play when you were operating in the field. In my estimation, a CIA man should be amoral. That may sound pretty shocking to somebody.
A
But what if
CIA man should be amoral. It's like being asexual. I don't know. What does it mean, amoral? Amoral.
my morality were that of a
Moral?
Nazi?
Amoral. No, it's different. But no,
Ask
it's just
Bruce.
amoral.
To be your
Hey, Bruce, what does amoral mean?
The morals
Amoral
out
means
of
without any, no good, no bad, just kind of beige. Just,
Beige, yeah, beige.
keep the truth in and stay away from disinformation.
Well, what was the primary purpose of the CIA as you viewed it? Was it an intelligence gathering agency, or was it an agency that was primarily involved in covert operations?
They were both part of the CIA's mandate in Vietnam, and the agency performed covert action, covert operations very well when the operations were held to a limited size and were of limited objective. When they got big, like the Phoenix program, they got out of hand.
Well, a lot of things got out of hand in the CIA. So here we are discussing a little bit the relation between, between the CIA and journalism, a very direct relation. Of course, this relation eventually was exposed starting from the 70s. But there is a case in particular which I would like to discuss today, because I mean, of course, we saw what Putin said about Tucker Carlson, and I would like to show it once again, because I think people need to address this part of the interview.
With the backing of CIA, of course. The organization you wanted to join back in the day, as I understand. We should thank God they didn't let you in, although it is a serious organization.
Thank God they didn't let you in. That's why he was given the possibility of interviewing Vladimir Putin. You think if he was a CIA agent, they would let him inside the Kremlin? I mean, guys, you have to understand. I mean, the fact that a CIA agent could enter the Kremlin, see, especially today, all the soft spots, everything, bring in maybe a hidden camera, film the security of the whole place. So definitely Tucker is somebody who is not a CIA agent. We don't think he is. I mean,
yeah, I don't think so.
So now you came to the conclusion.
I never really thought that. It was just a
an afterthought. Okay,
I come out with these things, and then
But Tucker's father was a CIA agent. That's almost for sure, guys. And I tell you why. Let's check out the character. Dick Carlson Carlson was the director of the Voice of America, which is basically a guy.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
he totally was.
I mean,
Voice of
come
America,
on, guys.
totally.
If this guy's not a CIA agent, and not only a CIA agent, he was also a Freemason and hanged out with another Freemason who was, of course, President Gerald Ford. Watch him here at with Gerald Ford, two Freemasons. Okay, great. So that is, but there is something I wanted to discuss that, of course, is not related to Tucker Carlson directly, but is also involving the influence of the CIA abroad, especially with journalists abroad. Now, the guy I'm going to talk to you about has almost been forgotten, but 10 years ago, when he came out with his book in Germany, and when he was interviewed by RT, well, he became a character overnight. I'm talking about a guy called Udo Flochte. Now, Udo Flochte died suddenly of a heart attack in 2017 under very suspicious circumstances. He had been a journalist for the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, one of Germany's leading newspapers, daily newspapers, for several years until 2003. He had been in places like Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, Saudi Arabia, Oman, United Emirates, Egypt, or Jordan. But his speech also regarding what was happening 10 years ago in Ukraine, well, I mean, when you see what Udo Flotte said, and Udo Flotte said this because he published a book. He published a book that was entitled Both Journalists, How Politicians, Intelligence Agencies, and High Finance Control Germany's Mass Media. It was published in 2014. According to Flotte, the CIA and German intelligence bribed journalists in Germany to write pro-NATO propaganda articles and much more. Now, I think it's important that today, for our show, we give you this, offer you this interview, this very rare interview that he gave back then, which I think will make people really understand the evil manipulation scheme that is built around journalism. It's really evil, guys. Udo Flotte probably was killed because of that. So God bless him, and check this out.
Journalist for about 25 years, and I was educated to lie, to betray, and not to tell the truth to the public. But seeing right now, within the last months, how far how the German and American media tries to bring war to the people in Europe, to bring war to Russia. This is a point of no return, and I'm going to stand up and say it is not right what I have done in the past, to manipulate people, to make propaganda against Russia, and it is not right what my colleagues do and have done in the past, because they are bribed to betray the people, not only in Germany, all over Europe. The reason writing this book was that I am very fearful of a new war in Europe, and I don't like to have this situation again.
I mean, he was prophetic here. Here,
and
he was prophetic.
Young. And he's young, and there's no reason for him to die.
Yeah, but he was too prophetic. And remember that we're talking about Germany. Germany is the place where the Nord Stream was blown up, no questions asked. The other day, basically, we had this ridiculous show in front of the German Chancellor by Joe Biden. Just so, huh?
Yeah, thank you for having me and for having the chance to continue our conversations we have continuously all the time. And yes, Germany and the United States have to play a role.
Thank you all very much.
Not answer the questions. Is there fiddling with that note? Let's go back to this great journalist who gave his life.
war is never coming from itself. There is always people behind it to push for war. And this is not only politicians, this is journalists
This interview
too.
was made, at least that I can remember, 10 years ago, and I think it was broadcast on RT. So 10 years ago. This interview has exactly 10 years.
And I just have written in the book how we have betrayed in the past our readers just to push for war, and because I don't want this anymore. I'm fed up with this propaganda. We live in
You're fed up, and you see how they murder him so they can do their bloody war.
Mm-hmm.
So welcome to the Leo Zagami show, guys. We need your support so we can carry on this show. Of course, if people want to know more about this war, one of the best books to read is this one. And I'm not just making this up. This is the only book that has the whole thing about how Ukrainian identity was created by the Illuminati, how this war basically it's a diabolical war. Christine? Yes. You're like, where am I? Okay, so here, chapter 2, for those who have this book, very important. Secret societies, Mason and Satanists behind the Ukrainian war. And let's keep on listening to this great interview.
In our republic, and not in a democratic country where we have press freedom, where we have human rights. If you see the German media, especially my colleagues who day by day write against the Russians, who are in transatlantic organizations and who are supported by the United States to do so, well, people like me, I became an honorary citizen of the state of Oklahoma in the United States. Just why? Just because I write pro-American. I wrote pro-American. I was supported by the Central Intelligence Agency, by the CIA. Why? Because I should be pro-American. I'm fed up with it. I don't want to do it anymore. And so I've just written a book not to earn money. No, it will cause a lot of trouble for me, just to give the people in this country, in Germany, in Europe, and all over the world, just to give them a glimpse of a view what goes up behind the closed doors. Yes, there is many examples for that. If we go just back to history, if you go into the year 1988, if you go to your archives, you will find in March 1988 that there was in Iraq, in Iraq, the Kurdish people have been gassed with poisoned gas. That is known all over the world. But in July 1988, they sent me to a town called Zubaydat, that is on the Iraqi-Iranian border. There was war. It was war between the Iranians and the Iraqis, and I was sent there to photograph how the Iranians have been gassed with poisoned gas, with German poisoned gas. You call it Lost and Zarine, mustard gas, made by Germany. They have been gassed, and I was there to make photographs how these people have been killed by poisoned gas from Germany. When I came back to Germany, there was just one small photo in a newspaper, in the Frankfurter Allgemeine, and there was one small article not writing how impressive, brutally, how unhuman, how terrible it was to kill decades after the end of the Second World War, people with German poisoned gas. So this was a situation I feel misused for having been there and just to give a documentary what has been done, but not being allowed to cry out to the world what we have done behind closed doors. Up to today, it's not well known in the public that with German public gas, there have been hundreds or thousands of people gassed in this city of Zubaydat. Now, you ask, what have I done for intelligence agencies? So please see, most of the journalists you see in foreign countries, they claim to be journalists, and they might be journalists, European or American journalists, but many of them, like me in the past, are so-called non-official cover. That's what the Americans call that. I have been a non-official cover. Non-official cover means what? It means you too work for an intelligence agency. You help them if they want you to help them, but they will never, when you are locked, or when they find out that you are not only a journalist but a spy too, they will never say, "Oh, this was one of our guys." They will not know you. That means non-official cover. So I have helped them in several situations, and I feel ashamed for that too now. Like I feel ashamed that I have worked for a very recommended newspaper like the Frankfurter Allgemeine, because I was bribed by billionaires. I was bribed by the Americans not to report exactly the truth, but I just imagined in my car while I was driving to this interview, I just tried to work out in my brain what would have happened if I would have written a pro-Russian article in the Frankfurter Allgemeine. Well, I don't know what would have happened, but we were all educated to write pro-European, pro-American, but please, not pro-Russian. So I'm very sorry for that, but this is not what I understand for democracy and for press freedom. I'm very sorry for that. Well, yes, I understand your question very well. Germany is still a kind of a colony of the United States. You see that in many points, like the majority of the Germans don't want to have nukes in our country, but we still have American nukes. So we are still a kind of a colony of the Americans. And being a colony, it is very easy to approach young journalists through what is very important here is transatlantic organizations. All journalists from really respected and recommended big German newspapers, magazines, radio stations, TV stations, they are all members or guests of those big transatlantic organizations. And there, in these transatlantic organizations, you are approached to be pro-American, and there is nobody coming to you and say, well, we are the Central Intelligence Agency, would you like to work for us? No, this is not the case how it happens. What they do, these transatlantic organizations, is they invite you for seeing the United States. They pay for that, they pay all your expenses and everything. So you are bribed, you get more and more corrupt, because they make you good contacts. You won't know that those good contacts are, let's say, non-official covers, or officially people working for Central Intelligence Agency or other American agencies. So you make friends. You think they are friends, and you cooperate with them. They ask you, well, could you do me this favor? Could you do me that favor? And so your brain more and more is brainwashed through these guys. And your question was, is this only the case with German journalists? No, I think it is especially the case with British journalists, because they have a much closer relationship. It is especially the case with Israelis, of course, with French journalists for a part, not that big as with German or with British journalists. It is the case for Australian journalists, for journalists from New Zealand, from Taiwan, from, well, there is many countries in the Arab world, like Jordan, for example, like Oman, the Sultanate of Oman. There is many countries where this happens, where you find people to claim they are respected journalists, but if you look behind them, you'll find they are puppets on a string of the Central Intelligence Agency. I'm sorry in interrupting you. I'll give you one example. Sometimes the intelligence agencies, they come to your office and want you to write an article. I give you an example not from strange other journalists, from me myself. I've just forgotten the year. I just remember that the German Foreign Intelligence, Bundesnachrichtendienst, it is just a sister organization of the Central Intelligence Agency. It was founded by the American Intelligence Agency. So one day the BND, this German Foreign Intelligence Agency, came to my office at the Frankfurter Allgemeine in Frankfurt. And they wanted me to write an article about Libya and about Colonel Muammar Gaddafi. I had absolutely no secret informations regarding Colonel Muammar Gaddafi and Libya. But they gave me all these secret informations, and they just wanted me to write, to sign the article with my name. I did that, but it was an article that was published in the Frankfurter Allgemeine that originally came from the Bundesnachrichtendienst, from the German Foreign Intelligence Agency. So do you really think that this is journalism, intelligence agencies writing articles? Oh yes, that article, I have reprinted it partly in my book. That article was how Libya and Colonel Muammar Gaddafi, how he secretly tried to build a poison gas factory, I think in Rapta was the name, yeah. And I got all those informations. It was a story that was printed worldwide 2 days later. But I had no information on that. It was the intelligence agency that wanted me to write this article. So, but this is not the way journalism should work, that intelligence agencies, that they decide what is printed and what not. If I say no, I give you an example from a very good example if you say no. Well, we have a rescue unit in Germany with helicopters for traffic accidents. It's called, they call themselves the Yellow Angels. There was one guy who didn't want to cooperate. He was a pilot of the helicopter service of the Yellow Angels in Germany. This guy said no to the Foreign Intelligence Service, Bundesnachrichtendienst, when they approached him and wanted him as a non-official cover to work for the German Foreign Intelligence Agency, under, just to pretend to be somebody from the Yellow Angels. So what happened was that he lost his job. And the court in Germany, the judge decided that they were right, because such a guy could not be trusted. He was kicked off his job because he didn't cooperate with the Foreign Intelligence Service. So I knew what would happen if I would not cooperate with intelligence services. Well, I have had, let me say, 6 times my house was house searched because I was accused by the public prosecutor, the German public prosecutor. I was accused of leaking secrets of states. 6 times house searched. Well, they hoped that I wouldn't do that ever again. But I think it's worse that the truth will come out one day. The truth won't die. And I don't mind what will happen. I've had 3 heart attacks. I have no children. So if they want to bring me to court or to prison, so it's worse.
Well,
3 heart attacks.
So maybe you got the last heart attack courtesy of the Central Intelligence Agency. We don't know, of course. What we know is that there is at the moment 2 US journalists that are, of course, also in Russia. And they are there because they are accused of espionage. The links between the murky world of espionage and journalism seems to be a reality, not fiction. And the revelations that this guy did at the time were edited for you today, and I think they make a great testimony for today's show.
Did the CIA ever approach you?
Sorry?
Have the CIA, did the CIA, well, not the CIA.
No comment. No comment. No comment. I would not like to comment at the present time. But
I don't think so.
No comment.
No comment.
No comment. No comment.
I think he would have told me.
Yeah, well, I mean,
but they thought I was a CIA.
They
thought I was a CIA agent in Italy.
No, I was offered something by an intelligence agency, not the CIA. but I refuse.
Well, obviously you didn't take it.
No, of
because
course.
nobody's swimming in cash over here.
No, of course. It didn't happen.
We have like no viewers hardly. Today we have a lot.
Today we have a lot,
any.
and actually I would like to invite those viewers to contribute so we can bring you more shows. And at the same time, also I would like to talk about tomorrow's Super Bowl here in the United States, because that's another big psychological operation. Of course, we have even Martin Scorsese with a UFO ad that's going to be presented tomorrow.
Who?
Martin Scorsese did a UFO ad. He never did anything.
Well,
UFO.
that's going to be cool.
Well, it's already out on YouTube if somebody. And then you have the alleged daughter of Zina LaVey, Taylor Swift. We have everything about how figures in the music business like Taylor Swift are created in volume 8.
She's Miss Americana, guys.
That's what they say, yeah? That's what they say. So
I'm not a Swiftie, so
definitely no Swifties around here. That's for sure.
I actually have never heard her music before. I don't listen to anything current.
No,
I'm still stuck in the 80s, 70s.
Yeah, I guess it's much better. It's much better.
Yeah, I've stuck myself there.
So you see how since the early days of the Cold War, efforts have been made by the United States government to use journalists, use the mass media to influence public opinion. And this, of course, also as a big psyop, a big psychological operation, because psychological warfare is central to the art of war. So it's very important. There's various techniques that are adopted, and journalists know how to create emotions, how to create certain kind of behavior. Journalists have a bigger responsibility, and at times they are sadly on the payroll of somebody, and I don't know. It's sad to see that you can be manipulated so much, and of course it's all about manipulation. Today, though, I must say one thing, guys. I want to compliment Donald J. Trump, because in South Carolina,
I don't frankly have time for total political correctness, and this country doesn't have time either.
That's true. Yes, he did a great job in this talk. He had a speech in South Carolina, in Carlson, in one of his rallies. At one point, at the end, the last 20 minutes, he put on this music in which he kind of went on. I think probably he had a screen there also with the images. He was in great form. He was really a mix between a politician and a showman, and much more.
A pastor?
Yes, probably. Donald J. Trump definitely has all our support, and Leo Zagami has been saying that he is the candidate who will win 2024 from October 2020, when all these QAnon idiots and stuff were like oh no, he will still be president. And all this disinformation, of course, led to the 6th of January trap. One good thing about the Trump presidency, he will pardon everybody. Today he called them heroes and martyrs, the people who are current hostages of the U.S. authorities because of political reasons. There was no real threat by these people on the 6th of January. So it's sad to see that they are still suffering in prison. It's sad also, like Trump today pointed out, he needs to bring back democracy. He needs to bring back the possibility for people to really believe in this two-party system, because at the moment we have one party which is not only using the media, and of course they have complete control over the media, also thanks to the fact that they control the CIA, they control the FBI, they control basically all the federal institutions which have been weaponized against the political enemies. This is leading
that would be us.
Yes. So this is unprecedented. and it's also very dangerous. And so it is important that we correct this altogether. And so I will urge you, if you have time, to go and see Donald J. Trump's speech today in South Carolina. It was one of his best performances to date, and he looked also very good. So I mean, it was an invitation also to come out and vote. And of course, he didn't even call, I think, Nikki Haley by name. I think he called her brain dead or something.
Bird brain?
Nikki Haley, brain dead.
Bird brain.
No, brain dead. Directly brain dead.
Brain dead. Because it's also bird brain.
Well,
or did he call?
But it's also.
He called Kaylee a bird brain too, but she was acting like a bird brain.
Who?
Kaylee
McEnany?
Yeah, I like her though.
Well, but I mean,
maybe she's a CIA.
But I mean, yeah, I mean the way that she acted
very bad.
Not very good, not very good. Today we had in LA, just this is quite funny. A cannabis factory, they called it. A cannabis probably cultivation center went in flames. And I mean, the smoke that came out of it made, of course,
got stoned.
I guess that the firefighters enjoyed their time. It was.
Do they have them coming out?
Check this out.
It's like a big bomb.
At 1:17 this morning, our LAFD firefighters were dispatched to a major emergency structure fire in South LA. Upon arrival, they found a well-involved one-story commercial with heavy fire showing through the roof. Our firefighters initiated an aggressive fire attack using forcible entry and hand lines, making an interior fire attack. Approximately 10 minutes into the fire, the structure became compromised with the fire through the roof, and our firefighters ended up backing out of the fire. So we had a total of 113 firefighters on scene. We had a knockdown of this fire. In
Doesn't he look stoned? Come on, Chris. He looks a little bit stoned. The firefighter looks stoned.
75 minutes. After knockdown of the fire, doing a search and rescue inside this building, unfortunately,
I guess there was some kind of rescue going on
we
there.
have located one victim inside, and we're still doing a search to see if there's any more victims. So at this time, we have one confirmed fatality.
Oh, so there's been a fatality. It's sad about that. I mean, you know, it's a fatality. But let's see what's up. Oh, well, it looks like...
I think they got a bag of chips now from the 7-Eleven.
I wish there wasn't a fatality, because it kind of ruined the no.
This was vacant, but this does appear to be a cannabis grow operation. The cause is under investigation, and we do have investigators on scene right now.
Okay. Save the edibles where somebody might. In any case, the Leo Zagami show moves on, because after the interview with Putin by Tucker Carlson, that idiot of Boris Johnson, who was of course accused of having sabotaged the initial peace treaty that Putin wanted to work out with Ukraine. Well, check out what Boris said.
World, people are watching that ludicrous interview with Vladimir Putin conducted by Tucker Carlson, and we must not fall for this tissue of lies. Above all,
this is the guy who, to get initiated into the Illuminati, put his dick inside the pig face that was chopped from the body of a pig, and the initiation consists in putting your...
How do you know that?
Because it's written, everybody knows. You can go on Google and search for in his boys club. You get initiated by putting your dick inside the mouth of a dead pig.
For the notion that Putin is somehow fated to succeed in Ukraine. On the contrary, he is doomed to fail. Read about it in in the Daily Mail.
Yeah, sure. Read about the Daily Mail. Another intelligence tool. This time of the MI6. These people are really, I mean, something else, guys. Something else. But there was an event which, I mean, nobody really talked about in this country. Fortunately, we would like to show you just some images because it's impossible to show you the video for copyright reason. But basically what happened was that John Travolta was invited in Italy and for $1 million ended up dancing the most demented Ballo del Qua Qua song.
It's like
Watch. I mean, he went from Saturday Night Fever to then Pulp Fiction, ending with the Ballo del Qua Qua. Poor John Travolta. I mean, I know that they gave him a lot of money. Actually, apparently, the day after he did this dance, idiotic dance at this Italian idiotic singing festival, he didn't give permission for rebroadcast of the whole thing. So here we go. John Travolta, I mean, probably they gave him a lot of money, but...
if they can't broadcast it, I wonder if he has to give the money back.
No. He broadcast it once, but you can't rebroadcast it. So he forbid anybody from rebroadcasting it.
It wasn't that bad. I mean, it was cute.
Huh?
I thought it was cute. It's just funny. Like,
yeah, but I mean, come on, man. Come on.
Whatever. I mean, Trump would do the chicken dance.
He's not
a president.
It's not a chicken, it's the duck dance.
What's the difference?
Well,
chicken and duck. I mean, I thought it was a chicken dance.
Okay, so this was the week in which Biden, I mean, when we talk about journalism, this was the moment in which basically Joe Biden was under the fire squad of journalists who destroyed him and made him do the worst possible.
He had a bad day.
He had a bad day.
Hey, everybody.
Of course, like Trump said today, there is a two-tier system here, justice system in this country. So he didn't get condemned for retaining classified information, even fraud behind his Corvette and stuff. But the guy who investigated, though, commented on his mental health, meaning his senile self, because the guy is completely senile. We all knew that. It's not a novelty. But of course, he was sent to save his reputation, and he made it even worse because he started to do things like, I mean, and then the epitome was when he said that Al-Sisi was the president of Mexico. He basically said, Al-Sisi, I told them to open the gates to let them in. Yes, you ask. Yeah, in fact, you are letting in a lot of people at the Mexico border.
Yeah, I know.
So maybe,
that's what you said here.
Maybe that was he was thinking.
The evidence said I did not willfully retain these documents, and they decided not to move forward. For any extraneous commentary, they don't know what they're talking about.
President Biden, something the special counsel said in his report is that one of the reasons you were not charged is because, in his description, you are a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory.
I'm well-meaning, and I'm an elderly man, and I know what the hell I'm doing. I've been president, and I put this country back on its feet.
He destroyed this guy, but he destroyed the cat.
Amazing how somebody can destroy a country in 4
and then
years.
say he put back the country on his knees. No, I mean, this is but even with all the help of the media and everything else, he hasn't managed to convince America about the fact that he's an old fart and that he should not be in that position.
Who are they gonna put? Don't say that.
Who? Michelle Two Balls? Michelle Obama Two Balls? Michelle? Here we have basically the prophecy of Nigel Farage.
Well, it's cruel on us, too. I mean, the man's got senile dementia. I've been saying that for some months. Oh, don't be so beastly, Nigel. No, he's got senile dementia. He's not just the leader of America, he's the leader of the free world. And under his tenure, many of these awful things around the world have happened. Doesn't mean it's all his fault, but he is clearly totally incapable of the job. And I don't agree with you, Stephen. I don't think it will be a Trump-Biden runoff. I think they'll ditch him before the Democrat convention takes place in July. I think he's just too embarrassing. His personal approval ratings are falling and falling and falling. They're down in the mid-30s, and that in America is sort of historic lows. No, I think they'll get rid of him. And I think what was interesting about yesterday was a lot of the more liberal media have turned a blind eye to his mental deficiencies. Now they're all looking at it. And I mean, when you think about it, to hold a press conference and say, hey guys, my mind is fine, and then to confuse who the president of Mexico is with Egypt in this very same week you've talked about President Mitterrand being still in charge of France when he died in 1996. I mean, look, literally every single day now, there is something that happens that is literally cringe-making. So no, I think they've got to get rid of it.
And you think they'll get rid of him for almost anyone, or do you have, is there a front-runner name that you can predict now?
Well, clearly the sort of good-looking, charming Democrat is Gavin Newsom, who was the governor of California, very articulate, would play well on the media. His problem, of course, is that under his tenure, California has had some catastrophic problems. And it would be difficult for him to shake that off. There's nobody else obvious other than, the real outsider that keeps being talked about. Now, whether we take this seriously or not, I don't know. But Michelle Obama's name keeps being raised. Now, I just don't know. I would have thought that, after all those years in the White House and living under that pressure, and given that Barack is now like David Attenborough of America, doing wildlife programs and incredibly popular, why the hell would you want to give it all up? But that is the one that's constantly being rumored.
And yes, that is the name that has been, because you see, Gavin Newsom knows that he will lose with Donald J. Trump, so he doesn't want to participate in this race. People are talking about Newsom, but Newsom knows he's more. I mean, he might,
and he's Hannity's friends with Newsom.
Yeah, and
that's weird.
That's weird, but because of course of the ex-wife.
I know,
of
but
Newsom,
it's so weird. It's not like Newsom's
but
this great character.
Newsom, he might be an idiot, but he's not completely insane. He knows that he can't run against Trump now in 2024 and win. So he says, why wasting my spendability? That means that in 4 years he can't present himself. So he's waiting. Newsom is a little bit more insidious. Michelle, in theory, like Nigel said, probably wants to stay back. They have all this success doing other things, but at the same time, she has been present and saying that she's outraged about this, and she's very scared about Trump's America and all that BS. So Michelle might be the candidate that might be sent to slaughter, because any candidate from the Democratic Party will be slaughtered politically.
Okay, what about RFK? Do you think that he stands a chance?
RFK doesn't stand a chance.
What about with the Democrats?
He's an independent. No, he's not the candidate with the Democrats. He's an independent.
But
he went out.
Democrats might vote for him instead of voting for no one. Because they probably won't
he doesn't.
vote.
Yeah, but they don't have the system in America is built with everything. The primaries are represented. And the independent will not. I mean, I'm quite surprised that that Trump has not announced yet the vice president, because let's remember that he has tried to reach out to Kennedy, and apparently Kennedy has refused. But if he's not refusing, he might become the vice president. That's possible. We'll get a completely different electorate for Donald J. Trump.
I don't want that.
Well, but yeah, I mean, it's possible.
Why can't somebody else be vice president? There's so many good people in this
Well,
country.
as long as it's not Kamala
I mean, it's
Harris,
like nobody
guys.
can
As
come
long
up
as
with
it's not
nothing.
Kamala Harris.
There's more people than that.
Trump said that he's ready to debate Biden. Look at his reaction. Here we have the Biden reaction.
President Donald Trump is ready to debate you right now. Do you accept?
He just said that on radio. What
Thanks,
do you
guys.
do immediately?
Immediately?
Yes.
Will you debate him? If I were him, I'd want to debate me too.
Do ba 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 do boo boo a boo ba do ba do boo boo ba do.
He's always eating guys dream of old stuff or shakes because by doing a little bit, by having a little bit of brain freeze, apparently it gets your dementia down. So it becomes less demented with all this stuff.
Mr. President!
Journalists know that Biden is on his way out, and that's why it's sad, in a way, to see that it's all kind of
For them.
so crafted.
They deserve it.
No, for Biden deserves it, of course. But he's no longer himself. You can see the guy is completely out of it. But thank you very much for following us, guys. Today we had a lot of people viewing us on Facebook, YouTube, later on band.video. Share, of course, our news. We will be back next week. Journalism and the CIA, you see, are very much connected. It's sad to see that there is no real journalism. It's very rare, and it's getting even rarer. And then now we have the artificial intelligence involvement in it, it's gonna be even worse. Please support us by purchasing our books. I particularly suggest volume 9 and 10. And of course, Christy's book, because Christy is participating. You're doing an interview this week. Christy doesn't give too many interviews. She's not like me. So you're giving an interview this week.
Yeah.
Where they can find you for this interview, Christy?
You can find me on this channel because we're going to rebroadcast it. So.
Okay. Okay. So we're
It's
going
not live. I guess it's edited.
Okay. Perfect.
But,
Perfect.
it's with my friend Lacey, and I'm going to be talking about my books and actually talking about my spiritual journey with the New Age thing and crystals and like the experiences I had.
The negative part.
The negative experience. I don't know if it was going to be a positive show, but I kind of told her that I don't do that anymore. And then I said, why don't you read my second book? And then it's all a journey. So for all of us. So I learned, and I hope I can show other people.
Let's thank another time our sponsors so that
Holly and Malgarazada and Bruce. Thank you very much.
And you can become sponsors of a show. Just go on LeoZagami.com and you will find the link for GoFundMe that you see also on the screen now, but also the link for Cash App. These are ways for sponsoring us. You can sponsor us, of course, anonymously or publicly. That's up to you. There is some people who decide to stay anonymous. Actually, some really kind donors have decided that in the past. So here we go.
Ramble's over there. He's being a brat. So he's sleeping right now.
Big brat.
Here comes the devil. Oh, here comes the devil. Oh, here comes the devil.
Oh, the devil with the devil, says I.
Shh, look out for the devil. Look out for the devil. Look out for the devil.
Oh, the devil with the devil, says I. You're so afraid of old man Satan. Now, why don't you stop your hesitating? You're gonna be a long time dead, so the devil with the devil, says I. You're always giving me the dickens, telling me that life's no easy picking. But just as long as I have fun, why, the devil with the devil, says I. You can have your social teas and bingo for your fun. But the things I like to do, you stop me one by one. Now even if you make me stronger, that ain't gonna make me live no longer. So even if I go to shh, the devil with the devil says I.
Look out for the devil, look out for the devil.
Oh, the devil with the devil says I.